Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Art of Braids podcast. I am your host, Karen Tenord, and I'm excited about today's guest. We're talking about a topic I hear about all the time: how to start a podcast. And today's guest is Monique T. Marshall, founder of the amazing brand Black to Business. And since today's topic is about how to start a podcast, who better to talk about it? Now, I remember back in the days, like I had started like a YouTube channel, and then all of a sudden everything was about audio this, audio that. Podcast came. I was like, oh, let me start this. And I was able to kind of like talk about, actually, I didn't even know what structure I was going with. I just was talking. And I had people on there, but it didn't go with the topic at hand. I didn't really have a topic. I just kind of was like, hey, just join my podcast. It was also called Beauty and Braids. Like, it was just like random people. And I was just kind of like winging it. I didn't know when to stop. I didn't know where to start. I did have an intro and I had an outro, but it just kind of was like, wait, what am I trying to do with this podcast? And like, it was like the art, the sponsorship, all of that stuff. And then I met Monique, and then I was like, you know what? I want to check this clarity session and learn about podcasting, because I was I think I was already in like maybe 90 episodes at the time, and I kind of like paused it because I didn't really have a direction that I wanted to go with my podcast. So it didn't the passion was kind of like lost, cuz I mean, if you don't know where you're going, like what's the point? And listening to Monique's podcast and seeing how she was setting, I'm like, yo, wait, your podcast is dope, yo. Sit with me, talk things through. And then I looked at the list and it was so overwhelming. I'm like, yo, there's a lot of work that go into a podcast. I don't think I'm ready. But this year I end up with two interns that I had to, like, I was like, we're gonna sit through this. It was a whole year that I had to sit with Monique and did my session. And I was like, I got it. And she was like, are you gonna start? I'm like, girl, I got it. And we finally put it together. I kept my head down and I kind of worked through it. And I was like, and I sent Monique the thing, and I'm like, girl, I got it. We about to do this. And I was like, thank you so much for that, because now I know who my target audience is, and this is the stuff that I want to talk about. And when it comes to braids, I'm like, how do braiders get educated? There's not really a podcast out there that's going to educate braiders on how they should go about in business, right? It's just like be a braider, and there's no other avenues that they learn about to become a well-renowned braider or something like that. So I don't want you to wait any longer. Let's welcome Monique T. Marshall. So hey girl,
Don't forget the tea.
I didn't forget the tea. I didn't forget it. Thank you so much for joining us. Your time and your brand is very important to us. I'm excited to have you here. But before we get started, I know you, but I want the listeners to get to know you. So please tell them about your story, because we know, we all have a story, and I want you to talk about share your background and what it is you do in your business.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. So as Karen mentioned, I am the founder of Black to Business, and an extension of Black to Business is our podcast. So we use our podcast as a medium to educate Black entrepreneurs on how to navigate the world of business and all the things that they need to do to thrive in their business and not just survive. We have different Black entrepreneurs come on the show and speak about their area of expertise. It's a very educational style podcast. Where it all started was, I'm trying to think how far I should go back in terms of my story, but I'm originally from Osceola, Georgia, a very small town, and I currently live in Brooklyn, New York. And I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. Coming from the South, I grew up where there were remnants of Jim Crow South, so I had experienced and saw a lot of discrimination, just a lot of things that you would see in the South at that time. So one of the things that I realized is early on is that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to own my own journey. But when I looked around, I didn't see entrepreneurs that looked like me. The only entrepreneurs I saw that were Black was the local hairstylist, the barbershop owner, or like the mortician at the funeral home. And that was it. So fast forward, I was like, okay, after graduation, I have to get out of here. But I always knew I wanted to do something geared towards the Black community, helping the Black community. So after high school, I attended Howard University. And while there, I was in the School of Business. And I just witnessed the power of collaboration amongst my peers. Many people were trying to start businesses, but they didn't have access to resources or finances to do so. So that's what ignited the fire within me to start Black to Business, where our mission has been to help Black entrepreneurs navigate the world of business with the resources, the network, and the connections to not just survive, but to thrive. And we use our podcast as a medium to do so.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
So let's go with the topic at hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is how to start a podcast. And again, like I said, that you are like one of the best people that we could talk about, talk to, because you do focus on black brands,
Mm-hmm.
and most the braiders I know is usually, people of color, right?
Yeah.
So I want to know, what are different types of podcast styles before somebody were to start a podcast, right? Like, it's like, wait, how do I, right? It's like, or just jump into it. But yeah.
So there are a couple of ways you can think about it. I always say that when you're looking to start a podcast, it's all in the planning. Like, you want to plan before you get to recording. So one of the things you really want to think about is, when it comes to styles, you want to think about if you want a solo show or you want a co-host show. So solo, of course, is you by yourself. Co-host is you plus one plus more people. And so that's what you have to think about. Do I want a solo show? Do I want to run this by myself, or do I want to have a co-host? And there are pros and cons to each one. So a solo show, meaning it's just on you. You have to be responsible for recording, for scheduling, like a lot of things. Unless you have a team, you're going to be responsible for it. If you have a co-host, those are things that you share those responsibilities with. And in addition to that, you have a co-host to help you manage the dynamic of the show. So maybe you all have different personalities, and so that comes through when you're recording your podcast episodes. So those are the first things that you want to think about if I want to do a solo show or whether I want to do a co-host show. So I think the pros and cons of course are there. One of the things I love about a solo show is that, yeah, you're doing a lot of the work yourself, but you're really depending on your schedule. So things to think about when you have a co-host is you're having to consider two people's schedules, or 2+ people's schedules. So those are the things that you want to think about when it comes to the different styles of podcasts. And then also you want to think about if you are going to have interviews, or are you going to just be solo, as in it's just you talking on the mic, or are you going to be interviewing people? Are you going to have guests? And then also you may have a variation of both. So that's fine as well. So those are the things you want to think about. And then from there, you want to think about, is my podcast going to be more informative? Is it going to be more educational, more entertaining? So those are other things that you want to think about when it comes to the different styles. So there are all pros and cons to each. It's really about planning and deciding what works for you.
Right. Okay. So my old podcast had everything. Girl, I was like solo. I had interviews. Did I have a co-host? I don't even know if I had a co-host. No, I didn't have that. Because I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go and record when I want. So it was no schedule as well. Like, I did I have a mic? I think I had a mic. But it was like small. But yeah, so you learn from my mistakes.
You learn from your mistakes. And there's nothing wrong with having like a mix of both. But I think one of the things, like you said, Karen, is it was like a plethora of things. And I think that if you're starting a podcast, you really want to start simple. So you want to start with, and it's nothing wrong with branching off eventually, but get the hang of it and then go from there. So start very simple and then move from there. So if you start, because I started only with interviews, and then it wasn't until years later I did my first solo episode. So, and I saw how the response was from that. So I did it a little bit more, but still not as frequent, but I still had that in there.
Okay. All right. So we spoke about, what type of episode, now that we established that as a new podcaster, right? So we're going to go into the next question is, what type of equipment is essential for having a good podcast?
Okay, so now I want to think about if you're, because I know what it's like to start on a small budget. Like literally the way I started, I still have the same mic, and I got a $60 mic, and I think I had a popper, which is like the thing that stops like all the pop teeth sound, all those sounds, and that was like $20.
Really?
Yeah, and then I started. So I'm telling y'all how I started. And then I was in the public library. They had the little rooms that you can rent out, and I literally had my little microphone on books, and I was interviewing people who was on the cover of Black Enterprise, and we were just like thugging it out. So that's how I started, and I think that why I say that is because it doesn't have to be complex. So all you need to start a podcast is a microphone and a computer. You don't even have to have a microphone these days because of how things have progressed with the software and things like that. So if you wanted to start with the basics, I would advise having a microphone because quality of sound does matter. So you want to start out the gate with something of quality, and it doesn't have to be $100 microphone. It could be something like cheaper. But if you don't have the budget for a microphone, you can start with, headphones, and they have their little mic on there. But if I had to say a basic kick, I would say you want to get a good mic, you want to get some headphones, and you want to have an editing software. Most computers, like if you have a MacBook, it already comes with GarageBand. That's what I use and what I recommend. So it's already in the computer. It's free. Other than that, it's Audacity. A lot of people use Audacity. I think they have a free extension as well if you have like a Chromebook or something like that. So you want to have some editing, and you can also record on those softwares as well if you are a solo show or if you have like in person. If you don't have if you have, your guest is away or whatever, you can use like Zoom. You can also we recommend Ringer, and that's what I use as well if I have guests on my podcast. So you want to have a microphone, some headphones, some editing software, and most times those things are free. And then you want to have some recording software, so you can do that on your computer, or there are cloud software that you can use.
Okay, come through quality on a budget.
Yeah.
We're about to start this podcast.
Start today.
Okay, today. Okay, so how can new podcasters keep their viewers engaged? Because I know with your podcast, like you're like on it. You just started doing like more visual, but like to tune in just audio, you've been having people engaged. Because I'm like, when I met you, I was like, I know that podcast. I know that. So, yeah.
So when you say engage, now do you mean like while they're listening to the podcast, or like your audience that are like when they're listening in the moment, or like on social media as well, or when you're marketing it?
I think it's more of like when they're like listening. So it's like how can you format it, or like we were talking about like entertaining and stuff like that. Like how do you get them to kind of like take notes, or stay present?
Yeah, stay present. That's a good question, because I think it all depends on your audience and what you're trying to convey. So for me, for example, my podcast is very educational, and it is geared towards business owners. So you always want to keep in mind, okay, what is the attention span of a business owner, and what will they give their attention to for X amount of time? So for example, majority of my podcasts are about 45 to 60 minutes. That's a long time. Like I'm trying to get it down, but it's still a long time. But the way I keep people engaged is I write a script where I have some points similar to what you have. And we have some, yes, I love it. And that's the way that, you prep people for before they come, one, so that they also help you keep the people engaged. But I think that you also set the expectation up front, so people know if they've been listening to the podcast, it's kind of like, okay, these podcasts are a little bit more lengthier, and it's okay that I invest my time in this because I know I'm going to take away X, Y, and Z. So you're always going to leave with something. And I think that when you have somebody's attention, you always want to make sure that they leave with something of value and keep that at the forefront. So another thing that we do in our podcast is we just started doing this though, but kind of like breaking up the style a little bit. So it's like all business, but we want to put some fun in there. So what we started doing is this segment where we say like not so serious business. And it's like it gives you a chance to like really know the personality of the person, because I'll be honest, my podcast is more so like a classroom. So that could get a little boring if you're not on your toes.
Right.
But we provide value. So that's another thing. But then also it's like we don't usually give much time to get to know the speaker. It's more so about the area of expertise. So that gives us a chance to know the personality of the speaker.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be like, crack a joke or something.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
crack a joke.
It
Have
depends on the
fun.
speaker, right?
Exactly.
Because if the speaker is not speaking, what
And
I'm
it's
saying?
boring. You could be. And another thing I will say, Karen, sorry to cut you off, is that people, I think knowing your personality, like for me, what I found is that one, people come on a Black to Business podcast and we have fun. And I think it's because it's a safe space. And then also my personality is, of course, I'm Southern. Like people like, your personality reminds me of like a warm hug. So I give people that space to be themselves, and we talk about real things. So you're not so uptight. And I think that's what allows us to like keep people engaged, because they know they're going to get the real on Black to Business podcast.
Right. Yeah. Like it's like, be authentic, be genuine, be open. And like, just know everybody's human.
Yeah.
Like, so next question. Like no, like we're gonna have conversations in between.
Right.
Like, if we fall off or something like that, it's okay, right?
It's okay. Okay.
All right. So now, next question. What are 3 benefits of having a podcast that you feel like? What has been beneficial to you, or what you think that other people would benefit from it?
I think so. When you were sharing your story, one of the things I thought about is similar to you. I started my podcast and then I stopped. And one of the things I noticed throughout that journey is, so I started in 2016 and we didn't come back consistently until 2021. I want to say 2021, February. And the growth of my business, the growth of just like my brand, my podcast has been like crazy. And I think it is because of the consistency. So I really want to say like the benefits of all of these benefits that I'm going to say it's because of consistency. So because of consistency, I've been able to increase exposure for my business. So for someone who's listening, that in business, you got to be consistent to see the results. So it's going to increase that exposure for your brand, but you're also going to get better because you're going to get feedback. You're also going to think and become more creative. And then one of the other things is it allows you to establish yourself as an industry leader or expert in your industry. And people want to be educated by brands as well. They want to be educated on, how do I use the brand, or do you care about me knowing certain things? Because it could be like, some people they think about braiding, but the fact that you're educating people on the different areas of braiding, they're like, there's that care aspect in her brand. So they want to support you. So you become an industry leader because of that. And then also, you provide value to your community and your audience. So, of course, the educational part of it, and they become the marketers for you. So I think that those are the top benefits, I would say: increasing the exposure, establishing yourself as an expert or a leader in your industry, and then the fact that you get to provide value to your community and audience. And I don't know about a lot of people, but for me, that makes me feel good that I get to provide value to someone who's taking the time to listen.
There you go.
Yeah.
Like, people can ramble off all the time, but it was like someone's like, oh, I listened all the way to the end. Like, oh, your time, time is money.
Thank you.
So it's like, okay. Yeah. So those are 3 benefits. Like, and I think I'm benefit for it. I haven't like relaunched my podcast yet since then, but it's just kind of like already knowing what's to come because of the organization now, and knowing what I want to speak to, who I want to speak to, and what I'm speaking about. It's just like, okay, like, how do braiders, like, it's a niche audience. However, the scope of having business is like, so many people are in business, so you can learn from everybody to strengthen your brand. So thank you. All right. All right. So now, how do you deal with, so now we're talking about interviews and stuff like that and podcasts. How do you deal with the cancellations of like interviews, like, or reschedules?
This is a good question, and I have to take a deep sigh for this because of the fact that, so in the beginning, it used to really frustrate me because of I was not, it was only, well, it was frustrating one because I felt like, okay, you could have told me. But then I understand life happens. But
Yes.
a lot of that frustration also came from the fact that I wasn't prepared. Like I wasn't prepared for the reschedule. I wasn't prepared for the cancellation. So when I think about preparing, one of the things you and I had discussed and what you're doing is it's really important to batch, like be prepared in advance. So as much as you can, I would say have some episodes in the chamber. So for me, it was a little tougher because I was scared to do a solo episode for so long. So I'm like, I gotta have a guest. I gotta have somebody. So it was a little nerve wracking for me. And then I realized, okay, if you're going to be dependent on guests, you really have to have some things in the chamber. So what I started to do was really get serious about batching my content. And that means like pre-recording things so that they're already pre-scheduled. So I do recommend really doing that. And then also understanding, like having some type of empathy and understanding like life happens for people. So allow them to reschedule if necessary. And then I just try to keep it professional when it comes to that. And what I will say, so I say try to batch and prepare in advance, and then also be ready to improvise. Like,
Listen.
have some people that can hop on because I've done that too. Like I'm like, listen, you gotta, I'm accepting you now. So I would say, like, listen, be ready to improvise and fix it later.
Listen, okay, all right, that's a word. Cause I know the other day I had it all like set up, like look, I'm a batch recording, and the person was there like, can we do it another? I'm like, you know what, we could do it on another day. I did not like my brain was about to explode. However, because I was trying to like, okay, this is gonna push back certain things. But I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, whatever. How can I help you? How can I make this work for you? Because your time is valuable. You're coming on my show to, give some expertise on what it is you're doing to help my audience. So it's like just changing the perspective or the lens that I have on what it is. Yeah. Okay, so let's keep it moving. And as we keep it moving, I want to know what keeps you motivated.
That's a good question, Karen. Oh yeah, I just called you Karen on the mic, so I called Karen Karen. If y'all watch Real Housewives,
it's an inside joke.
It is. Okay, so what keeps me motivated? Like, I've been doing Black to Business for years, and I feel like this is my purpose, and I think that's what keeps me motivated. Like I wake up, every day is not easy, but I know that I'm making a difference. Like I know that I'm making an impact. So when I get messages like, oh, I love that episode, or that episode really inspired me, or what you did inspired me, that really keeps me going. And it's so beautiful because not only am I making an impact like in general, but I get to make an impact in my community. Like that is, I love it. Huge. It's huge for me. So that's what really keeps me going on those tough days. And yeah.
Okay. So that's what keeps her going. She going.
Yes.
And then okay. So, all right. Those are really dope. And I want to like keep this going. But before we wrap up, I want to keep this on a positive high. So I got 3 questions for you, right? So what is your favorite go-to braid style? 2, is there a book that you can recommend that would be great for a starting entrepreneur? And 3, are there any products, projects, or events that you want to give us the tea on?
Okay, these are some good questions. Okay. I say the braided one for last because I want to really talk about my style. Okay. So the book that I recommend, so can I do more than one?
Yes.
Okay, because I really love one of the books that really helped me in my startup journey. And of course, as a Black entrepreneur, Black to Business, I always want to recommend a Black author. And it was Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. And it really talks about the plan for advancement for the Black community. And I really love that book because, oftentimes we feel like there is a lot of frustration within our community and we feel so helpless. But I love that book because it talks about a plan of action. And I think that's what a true leader is. So regardless of your background, when you are leading, you have to have a plan for people to follow. And that's what makes a great leader to me. So that's why I really love that book. And then another book that I really like is Deep Work by Cal Newport. And I love that book because it really talks about how to focus when you are the discipline that it takes to be focused. Because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we are very overwhelmed, but sometimes we got to look at our patterns. We got to look at our habits. Sometimes we cause those things ourselves.
This is true.
Yeah. And it really talks about how do you, restructure your life to accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish and the great lengths that you have to go through to be very focused. So that's a great book, and I love that. And I love that it talks about also how to set boundaries with other people as well. And then the last book I'll say is, this is a random book, but it's one of my favorites. It's called Against Empathy by Paul Bloom. And I like that book because a lot of times we are very empathetic people. And sometimes that's not always great because you got to get stuff done. And you cannot always think about, oh, I don't want to make someone feel this way. And a lot of times the right thing to do is the opposite of what people expect you to do or what would seem right.
Right.
So that's one of my favorite books.
Like you said, boundaries. That was like the first thing that like popped into my head when you was speaking about those books. I was there like, listen, no is a complete sentence.
It's a complete sentence. I love boundaries.
Especially as entrepreneurs, like we take on so much. And I'm a person who take on a lot. And then I'm like, I think I could do it. And then I get thrown something that's like throws me completely off. And I'm like, I did not plan for that. I didn't plan for the thing. And so now I'm planning for the flexibility. Like, okay, if I got scenario 1, 2, 3, like if something goes wrong, how can I problem solve? Like what? It's like thinking on your toes real quick. Like, like
true.
What? And nobody will realize it's like being calm under pressure.
Yeah, you are very calm under pressure. I've witnessed that.
Where it's just like, okay, in my head, what are we going to do to get this thing done? And then like go back into like fixing it. So it's just kind of like not to see anybody. Don't let them see you sweat.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's true. It's true.
Okay, so now the third question. I mean, well, it's not. It was the first question, but you saved it to last.
Okay. And so the other question is, what's my go-to braid style? I love me some box braids, and I also like the braids with the cornrows in the front and the box braids in the back.
Okay.
Because sometimes it's really quicker on the time, but I really like that style too. But I love me some box braids for the flexibility to just do different things with my hair. So
yeah. I can't wait to see you in box braids. So I don't think I have seen you in box braids since we met.
Yeah, I have not worn. I think I worn braids, but it's been a while since because I'm trying to give my little edges a break, and also the color. I have to be very careful about it with the color. So, but probably in the summertime, you'll see me with some.
I can see that. Especially like get up and go type thing. Yeah. Box braids is really good for that. And then the cornrows, it just cuts the time a little bit shorter. Okay. So I can't thank you enough for joining us on this show and talking about how.
And then I also wanted to answer the question
about one more question?
The new products.
Oh, your event. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So what's new with Black to Business? So this spring we will be launching our business center, and so what that will include is business formation services. So if you want to form an LLC, you want to form a corporation, we have those done for you services that we're going to be offering. And then also we're going to be helping entrepreneurs with business plan writing. So I'm so excited to introduce that this spring. And then in addition to that, this summer, we will be doing a 3-city tour through, it's going to be called our Black Men Who Lead event series. So it's focused on Black men advancing in entrepreneurship and the community. So those will take place in Atlanta, DC, and New York.
Listen, okay, she done spilled the tea. Monique T spilled the tea on all her projects. All the products and projects that she's working on. And that's really, really dope. Like collaboration is key.
Yep.
right collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like, okay, it aligns with what you're trying to do. Black men who lead
Yep.
and touring, come on, like come through touring. But no, I'm super hype. Business formation, all of that, the business center.
Yes, the
Like-
business center. It only made sense. Like people trust us with their business because we put in the work, and I think that it's only right to help people get to that next level so that they can, thrive. Not just thrive, but thrive. Statistically, 8 out of 10 Black businesses fail within the first 18 months. So we're trying to help them get over that hump.
Okay, come through with the statistics.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, y'all hearing this as braiders, like, you're not really thinking about formation of your business. You could be more than that, and you can also like come out of that. Like, you can teach through podcasting or so many other things. There's so many avenues within the business of braiding. And Monique, you speak to creating business, period.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you so much. All right. I didn't even know you was about to drop all of that. You was like, I got some more.
We got some
stuff
more coming. It's only right.
But thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story and on how important it is to start a podcast or how to start a podcast. And you definitely prepared for the show. So thank you. Your time is super valuable because I know how you are with your batch recording and your editings and okay, so this is a side note, but Monique has left her podcast studio at like 4 a.m.
Oh, God.
Like, I'm like, are you home yet? No, I am still editing. Like, this is the type of dedication and passion you have. You know what I'm saying? So I was there like, I definitely gonna learn from you because I don't want to leave at 4 o'clock in the morning. But it is that like that tenacity and that dedication that you have that I'm like, you know, who better than to talk about how to start a podcast the right way than Monique T. Marshall, right?
Thank you,
So, you know what I'm saying? So before we wrap up, I want you to kind of like tell the audience like how they can find you, contact you, and how they can support you.
Yeah, so you can check out the best resource if you need help with your business is Black to Business Podcast. To connect with us all across social media is at Black to Business TO Business. And I would love if you could shoot me a message. Let me know how you like this episode.
Yes.
And
Yes. Okay, so thank you so much. I'm truly blessed to have you on the show. You know, this is Karen Tenord, and you're with Monique T. Marshall. Thank you, and listen up. That's right.
Yeah. I also want to thank you, Karen.
Oh, you're welcome.
For having me on the show. It's so beautiful to see how you've grown, just your process, and I'm so proud of you and the work that you're doing. You're showing people how to take things to another level, and it, like you said, it just doesn't have to look this way. And the beautiful thing about business is that we oftentimes think that we have to create so many different products, but you have multiple streams of income within one business. So what you're doing is amazing, and I can't wait to see all the success that you're gonna have.
Oh, girl. I receive all of that, and I'm just like, thank you so much for assisting me on the journey, and being there as my cheerleader, and me, you know what I'm saying? So like, I'd be listening, I'm like, I done downloaded that podcast because
She done.
But yeah, no, thank you so much again for pouring that into me. Because I am kind of like, you know what, I'm gonna get this done. I'm gonna do it, and I'm like, I'm gonna make Monique proud.
you listen, y'all. When Karen sent me this email to be on a pod, I said, wait a minute now. So you doing the work, you doing it, and you're investing in yourself and you're implementing. That's the most important thing, and I'm proud of you, girl.
Right, I wasn't wasting your time.
You was not wasting my time. I seen that email. I was like, they not playing.
I'm like, it's coming. I just was waiting. You know what I'm saying? I might start something, but I'm going to finish it.
That's okay. And the timing is everything. So, yeah.
All right. Again, thank y'all so much for listening to our podcast on how to start a podcast. And, you know, we had Black to Business founder, Monique T. Marshall. Make sure you check her out, follow. And, you know, I'll see you on the next one. Listen, such an amazing interview. To get more info, go to kaidetres.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you got a lot from today. Be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and show back up. Okay, see you in a bit.